The way that we think can be incredibly powerful. It can either lift us up or it can drag us down. Our mindsets affect the way that we think about everything. And because we're not always completely aware of the quality of our thoughts, they can sometimes take on negative or self-defeating qualities. So in this video, we're going to explore 5 different habits that we can adopt just to make our minds feel like a bit of a healthier and happier place to be. And many thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. We're going to chat more about them at the end. For now, let's get started. A little while back, Robin and I took a few days off, and so naturally I had no place to be and time was mine to do with as I pleased. But still I noticed that I was kind of walking as if I had some place to be. Like my state of mind was just constantly looking ahead and never completely satisfied or content with where I was. And I think this is something that a lot of us struggle with, right? Because in work or in life, we're often taught about the importance of having a results-oriented mentality. It's a mindset that prioritizes having a goal or having like a sense of direction, and so of course that's important. But it's a habitual way of thinking that comes at a cost. It often means relinquishing our current needs in order to satisfy our future needs. And if everything that we do is results-oriented, then our existence starts to feel purely functional. The psychologist Robert Holden once said, "Beware of destination addiction. Until you give up the idea that happiness is somewhere else, it will never be where you are." And while reaching our goals does feel amazing, it's fleeting compared to the amount of time that it took to get there, right? So like if we were to consider doing a day-long hike, it would actually take 99% of the time for us to get to the peak, but we only spend about 1% of the time at the top, at which point we're probably also exhausted. And the top is incredible, the views are amazing, but it's just such a small part of the journey. So why only enjoy the 1% when we also have the opportunity to enjoy the 99% as well? Why not shift our mindset to become a little bit more process-oriented? So one thing I try to get into the habit of asking myself as often as I can throughout the day is, how can I enjoy how long this is going to take? By asking ourselves this simple question, we're kind of giving ourselves permission to slow down and to enjoy the journey. Let's say we're having a bad day and someone asks us why. We tend to usually say that our unhappiness is as a result of the circumstances that we're in. Like we got caught up in traffic, the weather is terrible, or we went to the store and it didn't have what we were looking for. We don't as often tend to dissect our own thought patterns as a potential cause for our unhappiness. So let's explore that with a simple equation by Jack Canfield, where event plus response equals outcome. Now, we don't always have control over the event, but we can change the outcome by changing the one thing that we do have control over, which is our response. And I personally find that a lot of our response comes down to the thoughts that we have about the event. So let's say, for example, that we see a friend walking by at the market, but she doesn't stop to say hi. Is your first instinct reaction to think that that was really rude of her? Or do you think that, oh man, she ignored me, she must not like me. Does that mean that I'm unlikable? Or could we get into the habit of exploring other possibilities instead? Maybe she didn't see me. Maybe she did see me, but she just doesn't have time to chat. Maybe she did see me, but she just doesn't feel like chatting, because we've all been in that situation before, right? It was Shakespeare who once famously said, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." So although we're not able to change the situation that we're in, we are in charge of how we interpret the event, and our perception determines how we feel, and it determines the outcome. We're going to quiz ourselves for a second here. I'm going to show you a list of words, and I'm curious to know which ones you use more often, whether you're saying it out loud or if you're just saying it to yourself mentally. Do you more often say words like frustrated, stressed, overwhelmed, irritated, stupid, afraid, annoyed, anxious, unhappy, or sad? Or do you more often use words like love, fun, confident, grateful, excited, hope, wonderful, enjoyed, proud, or possible? Even just like saying this list out loud is a bit of a reality check for me even, because I know for sure I use the words in the former list more often. And I think it's because like when I'm interacting with people in my personal life, I tend to highlight the things I'm having difficulties with, because I feel like it's our shared human experience. We tend to bond over the difficult stuff in life. But what can happen is over time, especially if we're unconscious with these word choices, they can have a very profound impact on how we view ourselves and the world. So even when there is no one around, we still tend to, or at least I still tend to, still use these words in my internal dialogue. And we tend to kind of limit our emotional joy with our choice of words. So whenever I remember, what I try to do is to get into the habit of just rephrasing how I'm feeling, the difficulty, the struggle of what I'm going through, into something positive that I'm hoping for instead. So instead of saying something like, I'm afraid that I'm not going to make the deadline for this assignment, I could rephrase it to, I hope I can finish this assignment on time. If we can make it a habit to shift our vocabulary to include a few more of the optimistic words, just shifting the balance towards that as opposed to the negative words whenever we can, it can make such a huge difference. If there's one thing that can really quickly drain my happiness or what I'm feeling, it's when I'm comparing myself to other people. And we all know by now that it is important to take some time off of social media. It can be a relief, or making sure that we unfollow sources or people who might be triggering. But I also don't think that we can stop comparing entirely. I do think it's hardwired in us, so I sometimes struggle when people are like, don't compare, because then I do compare and then I feel bad that I'm comparing, and it's just like a double whammy. So I think what can actually help instead is if we develop a habit of shifting perspective, just to allow for a healthier sort of comparison. So first and foremost, I think comparing often falls outside of our awareness, and we don't often even know that we're doing it, and that's what can be dangerous, because that's when self-doubt and fear can creep in. So if we can get into the habit of just bringing about some awareness, then we can also do a quick reality check. We can take a moment to realize that what we're seeing is what that person deemed worthy of sharing. We're not seeing the difficulty it took to get there. We're not seeing the hardship. And so when we humanize it in this way, we can actually choose to connect just by mentally cheering on the other person. I feel like it shifts the feelings away from envy and jealousy, which can be quite crippling. And instead, we move towards feelings of admiration, inspiration, maybe even motivation. It just makes our headspace a better place to be. The psychologist Guy Winch has a brilliant TED Talk on emotional hygiene. If you haven't seen it already, I'm going to link it for you below to check out. But in essence, he shares how we tend to take care of our physical hygiene much more than our emotional hygiene. Like, we all have the habit of brushing our teeth each night because we know that if we don't, we're going to get cavities. Or if we cut ourselves, we're quick to clean and bandage our wounds so that it doesn't get infected. But we don't always apply the same level of care to our psychological wounds, even though our emotional injuries can be as crippling as physical ones. We tend to either brush them off as being unimportant to deal with, or sometimes we can make them worse by putting ourselves down. So first and foremost, it's really important that we become aware of when we're in emotional pain, and then we want to tend to it before it becomes all-encompassing. So instead of bottling it up, it can really help to get into the habit to talk to somebody about it. In quoting the philosopher Alain de Botton, what helps enormously in our attempts to know our own minds is the presence of another mind. And so I want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. If you feel like you might be dealing with anxiety or overwhelm, depression, or maybe you're just feeling stressed, BetterHelp can be a support. I personally live with anxiety. I have for years, and sometimes I just need to talk to someone about it who just isn't a family member or a friend. And so therapy has been really important for me. So how BetterHelp works is they have a network of over 20,000 licensed therapists that have a whole wide range of expertise. And because they're trained, it means that they can properly listen and help, and you get to talk to them from the comfort of your own home. You first start with filling out a simple questionnaire just to assess what your specific needs are. And then once you've filled out the questionnaire, within 48 hours, you're already going to be matched with your therapist. I was actually matched within a day, which is incredible. And then you can already schedule your video or phone sessions, and you can exchange an unlimited number of messages. And obviously everything that you share is confidential. And in my experience, one of the most important parts of therapy is making sure that you kind of properly click with your therapist. So if you've tried one or a few sessions and you're just not vibing with the therapist you've been paired with, you can actually request another therapist at any time and as many times as you need to until you find one that you do click with, and no additional fee, by the way. Luckily, my therapist seems to get me, and she challenges me, which is what I need in understanding kind of the complex world that is my anxiety. It's been really insightful. And so if you'd like to join the over 2 million people that have taken charge of their mental health by talking to an experienced BetterHelp therapist, you can actually get 10% off of your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/pickuplimes, or check out the link in the description box below. But I think that's it for today, friends. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me today. Pickup Limes signing off, and we'll see you in the next video.